Welcome to the Get Detoxinated podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Root, author of Sauna Detoxification Using Niacin, following the recommended protocol of Dr. David E. Root, and co-developer of the Detoxination Protocol, a comprehensive method for removing heavy metals, toxic chemicals, and mycotoxins using niacin exercise and sauna therapy. This show features guests with expertise in environmental toxicity, saunas, binders, and related health and wellness strategies, with a special focus on practical recovery tools for people facing chronic toxicant-related illnesses. Today I'm joined by Dr. Scott Schroeder, a retired foot and ankle surgeon whose post-surgical work has brought him into the center of some of the most critical discussions surrounding metal sensitivity, galvanism, and the downstream effects of contrast agents like gadolinium. During his distinguished surgical career, Dr. Schroeder began investigating how retained surgical metals and dissimilar alloys in the body may contribute to chronic neurological symptoms, autoimmune dysfunction, and inflammatory stress. In this episode, Dr. Schroeder will be presenting an abbreviated version of the powerful slide deck he recently shared at the First World Congress of Biological Dentistry and Medicine, hosted in Istanbul, Turkey, by the International Academy of Oral Medicine and Toxicology, also known as the IAOMT. I've seen this full version of the presentation, and I can tell you it's compelling. The visuals, research, and even audio clips he'll be sharing will challenge conventional thinking on metal implants and their bioelectrical impacts. Viewer discretion is advised for portions of the episode that include surgical images, such as leg and foot incisions. We'll provide a content warning and a timestamp if you'd like to skip past those segments. Dr. Schroeder and I have been collaborating on this topic since early 2024, especially in relation to treating individuals with metal implants and gadolinium retention. I'm excited for you to hear this conversation and see the data that's pushing the boundaries of biological medicine. Scott, thank you for joining me today. I've been really a fan of your work for a while now because I was doing some research because I have had as a theory that heavy metals in the body are actually short-circuiting these electrochemical signaling in the body. That's probably because my background is in electronics engineering technology. But the thing is that when I was doing the research, your name popped up on my YouTube. And so I started watching every video that you've ever done, every podcast, your FDA, presentation and things like that. And I got to tell you, I was really pleased when you responded to my email back in, March of 2024. Could you go ahead and give us a brief introduction? Who is Scott Schroeder?
Boy, well, I've been a practicing physician and surgeon of the foot and ankle for over 30 years, and I ended up retiring a few years back here, but kept going with this particular passion of mine over my years of putting in thousands of implants, metallic implants in my patients. I started realizing a couple decades ago some issues, some problems that when I removed the implant, boy, these not only local symptoms, but systemic symptoms were resolving or dramatically improved that I didn't even know was related to the metal I was putting in the foot and ankle. And we're going to go through some of that today. And so I just started paying closer attention, started asking more questions of patients. And in the foot and ankle, we have to wear shoes. So a lot of the metal, potentially the heads of the screws or what have you, can become prominent. So probably in about 50% of the time, I was taking the metal out anyway. But after I started realizing this, I gave this as an option to the patients to, hey, I've been seeing problems. Patients have been coming back 15, 20 years later to have me remove the metal. And if you want, we can just get it out after everything's healed. And the vast majority of patients did opt just to get it out because they didn't want to keep something in their body they didn't need to have in there. So that's kind of how I got going, and then started, talking about it more, was asked to present to the FDA. And then, kind of after that, I've had people from all over the world, patients, doctors, what have you, researchers get in touch with me, and then lecturing around the world, as you see. And it's been great trying to spread the word on this.
Well, I'm glad you are, because this is a very important cutting edge topic and research that you're doing. And I'm really excited to get the slide deck presented to the audience because I've seen it. It's very, very compelling. So if you want, go ahead and share your screen And let's go through the presentation that you just did. Now, I know this is a modified version, but let's go ahead and get that started so we can show the audience what is going on.
Sounds great. We'll do it. So here we go. This is actually from a lecture I just gave this past month down in Istanbul, Turkey. In part of the introduction, we saw part of that here, but this is on metal allergies and reactions, evaluation of the interaction between dental and orthopedic metals and the systemic effects. During my surgical career, like I mentioned, I put in thousands of metallic implants, which some of these surgeries are very complicated. This is a many-hour surgery in the order of 6 to 8, depending. And then over these years, like I mentioned, I started realizing some of these symptoms that were coming on related to this, the metal I put in. And over the last 10 years of my surgical practice, I removed in excess of over 1,000 metallic implants in over 400 patients. And as mentioned, I presented back in November of 2018 to the FDA's Medical Device Advisory Committee, and then presented in multiple areas in London, New Zealand, Turkey, a number of occasions. Last year, Egypt, and then this year, as mentioned, over in Istanbul. And what I'm presenting is cause and effect, meaning and vast majority of the time, I was the one who put these implants in my patients. Where I put the implants in, certain symptoms then developed, and then the metal implants were removed, and the symptoms then improved, or vast majority of the time resolved. And some of the local signs and symptoms, swelling, pain, stiffness, local rashes, electrical type shooting sensations radiating from the area of the hardware, inflammatory reactions around the hardware, mimicking surgical site infections, but they weren't. I've cultured them, all negative, and once I remove the metal, it all goes away, but it looked like it was infected. And then erosion of bone around implants, dissimilar metals causing issues. And that's going to be a thing we're going to be talking about here. And then
before you go on, I have to say some of those symptoms looked a lot like what I'm seeing. In fact, these as well look exactly like what we're seeing with gadolinium toxicity from MRIs.
Yes, and I've been learning more and more about that recently, and meeting with
Debbie,
one of the Facebook gals who I
Debbie,
know also.
Debbie Heiss-Lambert.
Yeah, and it's just incredible what she has going, and she has a great book out on that too.
Yes, she does.
Yeah, maybe you can put something towards that at the end in that one.
Sure.
Because that really goes into it. But brain fog, weakness, balance issues, muscle twitching, muscle spasms, of the legs, back, neck, and even full body, fibromyalgia-like symptoms. Neck pain seems to be one of the red flags. That and hypothyroidism and thyroid issues. When I see that on a patient's chart, I immediately ask them, okay, how do you do with women, how do you do with earrings? And, oh, I'm fine. How about, cheap jewelry? Oh, no, I can't wear that. That makes my ears all irritated. And that's what I'm talking about. We have to ask the right questions. And but neck pain is a big thing, back pain, severe fatigue, previously diagnosed as chronic fatigue syndrome, nerve symptoms, radiating pains, throughout the body, dermatological conditions involving other areas of the body, not related to necessarily the foot or ankle. Like this patient had 2 stainless steel screws in her foot. And and this is what came on after that. She was allergic to nickel. And so she ended up getting the screws out, and then it all resolved. So this is because of the foot. And so other systemic, issues, anxiety, any degrees of anxiety. I mean, I've had many patients that just, life is just too much. They just want to be done with it. Vision changes, blurry vision, double vision, temporary blindness, or it's also called amaurosis, sleeping disorders, headaches, migraines, hair loss, GI issues, diarrhea, IBS, and then exacerbation of a multitude of arthritic conditions where it becomes worse. And then I remove the metal, and then the swelling in the hands go down, or they can actually grasp a door handle or button their blouse again, just from me removing the metal from the foot or ankle. And then paralysis issues, what case we'll be presenting, stiff persons type syndrome. And I've had actually a number of these now. and then pain associated with hardware elsewhere in the body. Actually, we have a case of that I'll show you here too.
Okay.
So when we're looking at trying to diagnose metal allergies, the timeline is very important. And like I just talked to a guy the other day, he had this neck pain that he had for 3 years, and then literally just prior to that, he had a titanium dental implant placed. And he goes, that happened right at the same time. And he goes, I didn't put it all together, but that's the type of stuff you have to kind of look at. Sometimes, though, these allergies, it's a type 4 delayed hypersensitivity reaction where it may take a number of days to weeks to even months or years sometimes. It can be 3 years or so before it develops. That's why it's difficult to really kind of pin it down sometimes. But other times, you just have to look, when did these symptoms start? What did you have placed prior to that, metallizing the body? So this, just what I described to you, all of that, some of that I have aren't in these papers yet because we haven't written them up yet, especially the stiff person syndrome. But the biologic response to metal implants, this is the 149-page paper put out in September of 2009 by the FDA. And I'm just going to go through this pretty quickly, and people come back to it and look at it. But this goes through all these different symptoms that can be associated with the various metals. And it's quite extensive with everything here. And so this paper is, if anybody wants to know something about this, is the kind of the cat's meow as far as papers, a comprehensive summary of disease variants in metal allergy by Roche et al. And it came out of the Allergy and Clinical Immunology branch of the National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health. And I'll go back to that, is just an incredible article, and it goes through all the same type of stuff. It's even more extensive and lists all these different types of conditions that can come on from metals being implanted in the body. And I've seen a number of these. So, asthma, I've seen that. And so we just have, we go through, a multitude of these conditions: rheumatoid arthritis, exacerbating lupus, ulcerative colitis, as well as irritable bowel, fibromyalgia, all this, rosacea, psoriasis exacerbates those conditions. And then this is an article that is great because it's talking about titanium, and a lot of docs think that titanium is, inert. And surgeons, they're being told this from somewhere, I don't know where, but I've been working with these corrosion engineers up in Canada. And so and these are professors, I talked to one of the professors, I said, yeah, the surgeons think that titanium's inert. He goes, inert? Titanium is not inert. Especially when it's in the body. That's a corrosive environment. And you'll see some slides coming up of how titanium is not inert. So
let me ask you if we'll be able to share this slide deck through, I guess, maybe Google Drive.
Sure. We should be able to, yeah.
Good. Yep. I think that would be helpful for people to be able to see these slides again.
Yeah, that should be good. So, so 5 ways, that metals can react negatively in the body: physical, just improper placement or impingement, infection, then toxicity related to excessive metal ion release from wear and tear and or corrosion, and then allergy or hypersensitivity, and then electrical and or galvanic reactions, which will go through these things. So again, working with physicians, surgeons, dentists, corrosion engineers from around the world, I consult with a lot of people from around the world, and I'd have to say the majority of them do have dental metals that I believe that are affecting their overall health and are potentially reacting with the orthopedic metals in the body, given some of these electrical potentials we're looking at here. So this is a first patient. People will be able to come back, kind of read some of this, but in general, he had I had straightened his toes out. He was getting infections at the tips of his toes. So I had to straighten those out and then shorten the 2 bones that you see the screws in, because he was getting like an ulcer, almost pre-ulcerative lesions on the bottom of his foot, like a diabetic would. But he was in his later 40s at this time, and he had neuropathy, but he wasn't a diabetic. And so put these screws in, straighten the toes. Hey, all the infections went away. Great, see you later. And we did this on both sides. And then he ended up coming back, 5 years or so later, and Then he had a big toe problem that I had to straighten out. But I go, hey, what's going on over these areas? And he goes, I don't know. But it was all swollen. I go, well, the bone's healed. Let's just get those screws out. So we ended up doing that. And he comes back later, and he was an engineer, and he worked on metals at the dams. And he goes, okay, doc, looking at this and the metals in my body, I ended up having these, amalgams in my mouth and these gold crowns placed years ago. And like 8 years ago, he ended up having a titanium screw in his knee for an ACL repair. Then 6 years ago, he started developing this neuropathy. And then, then you did the surgery on my feet. And I didn't realize it at the time, but about 3 months after that, that's when I started developing this paralysis that would last 40 minutes or so. And then it progressed to 10 hours a day, where he was completely paralyzed. He could breathe, but he could not talk or move. And he was seen at University of Washington, Mayo Clinic, and basically was told that he would be in a wheelchair the rest of his life. And he goes, then you removed the screws from my feet in the surgery. And I went from being paralyzed 10 hours a day to 3 hours a day overnight. And he goes, I know something's up. So anyway, we sent his blood off to Germany, and we got him tested with the ELISA test over there, which is a lymphocyte transformation test. And basically it takes the lymphocytes, or the inflammatory cells of the body, and then challenges it with different concentrations of various metals. And then you come up with what's called a sensitivity index. And so this is his sensitivity index. And his nickel was high at 2.8. And then the ELISA also looks at under the microscope of the cells to see what's happening with the cells. And in his case, the cells were swelling, lymphocytes were swelling and having issues with it. And then his palladium was off the charts at 129.2. And so that was extremely positive. And he ended up having palladium in his gold crowns. His gold crowns were 26% palladium. And so he ended up getting, the screw out of his knee, his amalgam out, and then the day he got the last gold crown out, he has not been paralyzed since. And that's been like over 10 years now. And these were the screws, those little ones, that's what paralyzed him, those little screws, the big ones from his knee. But you can see the ring he's wearing, it's not metal. And so anyway, and I believe he was having a problem, because I've had the screws in the feet and he became paralyzed. I took him out, but he was still paralyzed 3 hours a day. Why? Well, I felt there was a reaction going on between the foot and the mouth, contributing to that somehow. And so that's when I started asking questions about that. And this is just kind of an open thank you from him to Dr. Stetsko, who's the inventor of the ELISA test. And she was still alive at the time. And I was working with her, and then she actually accepted his blood and on a gratis basis over in one of the labs in Europe, and then did the test, no charge for him. And it was really that test, the ELISA test, that allowed us to see what was truly happening with him. And that was the first test that then it directed us directly to his mouth. So that's how you can use these tests to really see what's happening and have a better understanding. And people can read this later too.
Yes. So the ELISA test right now is not readily accessible in this country, if I understand correctly. But they're trying to, I think, start up something in Florida. But what other tests can people do? Because I think they're going to be really interested to see how metals are affecting them.
Yeah. So there is a ELISA lab up in Canada that they're getting going, and that is probably pretty close to getting going. I think they're hoping here in the next few months or something. But then the other one is the orthopedic analysis that I've used it's out of Chicago, orthopedic analysis out of Chicago, and it's a lymphocyte transformation test.
Okay.
Yep. So that's something that else is available, at least at this point in time.
Right. I'll see if I can figure out how to direct my followers to be able to test that way, because I think this is going to be amazing.
Yeah, I do too. I think these tests are extremely underutilized at this point in time. I think they can give us, a wealth of information that we had no idea was happening. with our bodies, as you'll be able to see from some of these, some of the case presentations that, I'm going to be showing you here. So this was
Yeah.
a teacher that came to me, and she had stainless steel screw in her foot, or screws in her foot, and then she had to have. That's a long time ago. I didn't operate on her there, but we had to do another surgery, but she had problems with earrings. I thought she may be allergic to nickel. We hadn't tested her at that time, but so let's just get the stainless steel screws out. I'll use titanium. So we did, and she did well. But then she started having some issues and just wanted to have the screws out. So I said, okay, we'll go ahead and get those out. And while I was doing the pre-op, I noticed all these medications she was on that I said she wasn't on before. And I'm going to have you actually just listen to her. I actually presented this case to the FDA as one of the case presentations I presented. So I'm just going to have you listen to her.
Okay, around 2016, beginning of, we were having some symptoms with the screw, so we decided to get it out. And then we realized you were having a number of different symptoms, some fibromyalgia type symptoms you were diagnosed with, some chronic fatigue, and we decided to get you metal tested, found out you were allergic to titanium dioxide and nickel and vanadium, both of which titanium dioxide and vanadium were then the titanium in your foot, so we decided to get that out. Also, you had a stainless steel bar with 15% nickel behind your lower teeth. So what happened after we got the titanium plate out of, or titanium screws out of your foot?
So almost immediately after you took the screws out of my feet, I noticed that almost all of my body pain and my migraine symptoms had gone away. And within a couple of weeks, actually all of my rosacea had cleared. So I was able to stop most of my medicines within a month. I think I was taking 18 different medicines for fibromyalgia at that point. And then shortly after that, I made an appointment to take the bar out from my teeth. And since then, I take one pill a day for my migraines, and that's it.
Okay, thanks.
So that case was one where I was talking to her, and I hadn't heard of all these symptoms prior. And then I asked her like when her fibromyalgia symptoms started. She goes, well, about 2 years ago. Okay. And what else do you have? Well, I have this chronic fatigue. And I go, well, when did that start? She goes, oh, about 2 years ago. And I go, have you ever had any other metals in your body? And she goes, no. I go, what about dental fillings? Because people always forget about their dental fillings or metals. And she goes, nope, never had a cavity. And I go, She goes, oh, but I have this bar behind my lower teeth. And I go, oh, so you had braces? And she goes, yeah. And I go, when'd you get braces? She goes, oh, about 2 years ago. Yeah. And this is the other case that really, got me going, because she didn't really have symptoms prior to that. And this titanium was already in, right? And so we go and so I go ask your orthodontist, find out when you got your braces. She goes, oh my God, I got my braces in August of that year. And then September, that's when all the chronic fatigue started, the fibromyalgia and all this. But see, then we removed just the titanium and vast majority of the symptoms went away. And she did end up getting the bar removed, and then even more symptoms. So that's where I was seeing these reactions between these two.
Mm-hmm.
So that made me start thinking. This is another case we'll listen to. She ended up having I had stainless steel. She had already had a stainless steel plate and screws in her leg from a previous ankle fracture. So I like to keep the metals the same, not mix them. So I go, okay, I'm going to use stainless steel to fuse her big toe joint. Let's see. Yeah, here we go. So fuse her big toe joint. And so then she had more symptoms there than I thought. And we were, planning on getting that out anyway. And so I go, well, what about that plate and screws in your ankle and leg? They bother you? Go, well, yeah, I've had these severe cramps for years. So I'm going to have you actually listen to her and see what she has to say about this.
Okay, so about 11 years ago, you had fractured your ankle and you had a stainless steel plate and screws placed. And then what kind of symptoms did you develop after that? And how far after you had your ankle fracture, did you notice those symptoms?
Yeah, it was about a year, maybe 2 years after the fracture. I started to develop severe muscle cramps and leg aches in my leg.
And this is what I mean by it may not be right away when you develop these. So this is a year or longer afterwards where she developed these symptoms. Okay, so it's not going to be right after. Here you go.
And a lot of times they would be after I went to sleep at night, maybe 15 minutes to an hour after I went to sleep, I would be woken up at night with severe leg cramps, so bad that I couldn't sleep. A lot of times I couldn't even get out of bed and even walk them out. It would take me a long time. I would stand and cry and try to massage them out. They couldn't even be massaged out, even with hot water or even with I have a jacuzzi. That wouldn't even work. I had to try to just wait out the pain. We tried various drugs, tramadol, Vicodin, quinine, all kinds of drugs. Nothing eased the pain at all. I just had to wait for the cramps to go away. They were almost constantly every night. They were worse on nights that I did a lot of activity on my legs, but they were almost every single night.
And then we had done some surgery on your big toe joint and had a plate and screws there. And I noticed you were having some symptoms there more than I'd expect. So then we talked about the plate in your ankle and decided just to get that out at the same time. And what happened after that in regards to your leg symptoms?
Okay. As soon as you took out the plate out of my legs, I have not had a single leg cramp of any kind since then. Not one, not even a twinge, nothing. I've not taken any drugs for any leg cramps at all, not even a Tylenol, none. And at Nationals, I was on my feet for a solid week from 4 a.m. till 10:30 at night, running, not a single leg cramp.
All right, thanks.
So, I mean, that's even on, well, yeah. I mean, that's kind of along the line of some of these, spasms and even stiff persons type syndrome to a degree, and then boom, I mean, gone as soon as I remove the metal here. So,
The stiff person syndrome reminds me of Celine Dion. Do you suppose there was any connection there with her symptoms?
I have no idea. I don't know if she has any metal in her body or if she did, get something. Like I say, we're having some issues with these dental implants and a lot of people, I mean, for looks and what have you. I'm not saying she has any, but I have had issues with, people, getting metals and not realizing it's related to this type of thing,
Mm-hmm. Right.
So I think any metal in the body, I don't care if it's just in the foot. I mean, it can cause problems all over the body.
Yeah.
So, or in the mouth or what have you, So, yeah. But that kind of, put me into the mindset, okay, what's happening between these metals in the foot and ankle that I have and these dental metals and, the stainless steel bar, the braces go on and then her symptoms develop and I remove the screws from the foot and their symptoms go away. What's happening here? So started looking at these charges because all metals have a unique charge to them. And a more positive metal, we call it the cathode, and that's like gold is one of the most noble metals or the most positive. And then a more negative metal is the anode. And then all metals in the body will corrode. And so, I mean, some at definitely slower rates or what have you, and they're kind of designed to be, quote, biocompatible, but that still does not mean they don't corrode. So they still will corrode. And and then these ions can be released in the body when somebody's allergic to it or has issues with it or gets toxic levels. I mean, that can cause some problems. So, and then the question is, are because of some of these reactions potentially between these metals, are some of these metals corroding faster and then releasing ions more readily into the body?
And these ions can store in fat, can't they?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing. And that's what you kind of work on with and that's what really intrigued me with what you're working on, because once they're released from the body, where do they go?
Right.
Into the fat, into the tissues, proteins, what have you. And so then, we have to get all of that out of the system also, right? So yes, there can be some things that happen quite readily when we get metals out, but then sometimes not as readily, especially when we talk about gadolinium. for getting that out of the system. And I think and everybody's individual also with this. So it takes some people, it takes a lot of time to get things detoxed and get things out of the body to get them going again. So
Exactly.
well, we look at, yeah. So we look at this battery type reactions, and basically it's a reaction between dissimilar metals, potentially, that are implanted in the body. And we look at, just a simple physics of battery. So we have a cathode and an anode, and then we have an electrolyte between them. Well, what do we have when we have metals in the body? Even if they're not touching now, okay? Even if they're not touching, in the battery, we have the electrolyte, right? And in between the two. So that's, we have to start asking questions of why. Why is this occurring? Why are these symptoms like resolving overnight when some of them, when I remove the metal from the body? So we look at a resting state of a nerve, and it's about minus 50 millivolts, and then the nerve will fire off around minus 55 millivolts, plus or minus. So then we look at, okay, how much of the body's function involves electrical impulses? And well, pretty much all of it. For you to listen to this right now, it's electrical type things within the inner ear, and then to look at things, it's electrical impulses in the eye, and just for you to function, it's electrical, electrochemical, typically impulses and reactions. So I started looking at this, and this is what I presented, or something similar to the FDA, where I wanted to kind of test this. So I asked one of my neurologist colleagues, I said, hey, can I borrow some of your equipment to try to start to test this? And he goes, well, actually what's going to work better is you get a high quality voltmeter or multimeter, and then use ultrasound gel and test, because I wanted to test like a titanium plate, stainless steel plate or screw, and see the difference, right? So
and I love your Hot Wheels track there.
I know. I presented something very similar to this to the FDA, but people were sitting. I mean, this panel is like 60 people, from professors and doctors from all of the United States, right? And some of the colleagues that were sitting out in the gallery there said people started sitting up and paying attention when you started presenting this. So here is then. The potential between this is a titanium plate on the right and stainless steel screw on the left, and it was 151 millivolts, and that was surprising to me. And plus or minus doesn't matter as much. It's just where you put the probes, on which side there. So anyway, it's 151 millivolts, and I go, well, I'm having a problem from the foot to the mouth, so I'm going to take my Hot Wheels track here and I'm going to run it 6 feet down, right? And it was still 68 millivolts. And I go, And after I presented here to the FDA, we were talking, and somebody goes, boy, it sure would be nice to do this, in vivo, or, in the human body. And I go, well, I think I can do that. So
just to reiterate, though, it's only 55 millivolts that matters, right? To trigger a nerve.
Well, actually, if you really look at it, it's the difference between minus 70 and minus 55. So it's really only about 15 millivolts.
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
And I don't know how all that relates. These are just findings and measurements that we're taking, but I think we have to ask that question.
Right.
And so then I said, I think I can do that. And in my surgery center here, and the issue was finding a sterile probe to use when I'm removing the metals in the foot or ankle, right? And but we just used a cautery probe and cut off the end and put a new fitting onto it to go into the machine, and voila, there we were. So this is where we are going to want to warn people that these are some incisions, and we're going to look at titanium plates and screws and stainless steel screws in the foot and what have you. So if you're a little
there'll be a warning right now. Yep.
Right now. Okay. So here was a lingual bar, and this one was stainless steel, and we're going to test the titanium in the foot, okay? So here comes this picture, so be careful. So here it is, and so that's titanium plate and screws in the foot. And so it was minus 158 millivolts, okay, between the foot and the titanium in the foot and the lingual bar stainless steel. So then I removed the lingual bar, the titanium from the foot, and tested the bone, and ended up with 35 millivolts. So that was minus before, and so it's a total of 193 millivolt change, or a potential difference, between the two. And
Amazing.
so, yeah. And then gold. Here's gold. Gold seemed to be the highest, for at least electrically that I was seeing. And I did a number of these studies, and they're very, very similar in the 200 millivolt range for the titanium and whether it's amalgam or porcelain fused to metal crown in the mouth. But gold always seemed to be higher here. And here was to titanium as the screw in the foot. And so minus 340 millivolts, and then I removed the screw from the foot, tested to the bone, and it was minus 37. So it was like a 300 millivolt change, with gold.
Incredible.
And that was pretty consistent with gold for whatever reason. So this was a recovery room nurse who I had known for quite a while, and worked with her on multiple surgeries over the years. And so this was her plate and screws here. And then she had an amalgam filling. This is a mercury amalgam. These are 50% mercury. And actually, a neuroscience professor that I work with from the University of Pennsylvania, she actually wrote a book called Mercury Free that talks about all the detriments of mercury amalgam. And mercury's been banned in good parts of Europe now, and all this. And there's definitely other things to be able to use. So it can be quite detrimental as far as this goes. So we tested to her mercury amalgam, and she was minus 154 millivolts. And so then we, took the plate and screws out, went to bone. And so she was 7 plus 7. So she was 161 millivolt change, before and after.
Mhm.
And I'm going to actually have you listen to her voice memo here. After we remove this, and to see what here you go. Here she is.
All right. So last week we had removed 3 titanium plates and 14 titanium screws from your left foot. And prior to that, what kind of symptoms did you have in the foot as far as pain goes?
I had at least 7/10 constant pain, sharp, achy pain everywhere in my foot.
And what about the rest of your body? What kind of pain did you have in your body?
I was achy everywhere, in all my bones, my muscles. I was just achy, and I did not sleep well.
And since getting the hardware out last Friday, what have you noticed?
It's incredible. My body feels fine, no aches. I'm sleeping like a log immediately, and the pain in my foot and the swelling's gone. The pain is maybe a 2 at the toe area. Otherwise, the rest of it is 0.
Okay, thanks.
That's amazing. Again.
So it just dramatically improved here. And like I said, I've been working with some corrosion engineers up at the University of British Columbia, and we have an explant study where we're looking at a number of these orthopedic devices that are being removed from patients to see if we can see corrosion in these devices. So we're using a scanning electron microscope, or SEM. And here was her plate and screws. They were only in for 4.5, 5 months. And so this is the corrosion underneath one of her plates in just, like I say, I think it's 4.5, 5 months. And that's the corrosion.
Amazing. Gosh. Stunning.
But titanium's inert. Titanium's inert, right?
But titanium is also not pure titanium.
Well,
right?
no, but titanium is not inert, and even quote pure titanium in the article that I showed previously, it's called Harloff. They did actually SEM studies and what's called ICP-SM or MS that breaks down these metals, and they found trace amounts of nickel in all of those devices and other metals also.
Mm-hmm.
So so nothing is pure as far as that goes. But a lot of these are alloys. Okay, like this is titanium, and it's called Ti. 6A4V. So it's titanium and then 6% aluminum and 4% vanadium is a lot of the standard makeup of the different metals of titanium alloys anyway. But there's a bunch of different types of ones these days. So here was a gallbladder clip that was removed, and this patient had dramatic improvement after this, as well as she had clips. These are vascular type clips. Also, she had them in her thyroid area, and then had them removed. And she was in a wheelchair a good part of the time. And then after removal of all this, dramatically improved. But here is the titanium clip, and this is the electron microscope image of the clip. And look at all the corrosion happening there.
And that corrosion is going somewhere in the body. Like we said, probably the fat.
Correct. All those metal ions are released in the body and can go systemic. They can stay local too. Many times I'll see black tissue right around when I remove it. And probably in about 5%, I'll see that black tissue, when I remove things. And then I remove all that because I've sent that black tissue off to pathology and it's come back with titanium particles, that have released from the plate or screws. And I've seen it from stainless steel too. So, but yeah, it releases and then it goes throughout the body, and that's where your job comes in to get that stuff out of there, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So here's another one. This guy was totally disabled. I mean, he had multi-million-dollar home. After this surgery, it was a back spine surgery. His family disowned him. He lived out of his car. It was just hard for him to function. His cognition was gone. He was committed to the psych ward on multiple occasions. And then after removal of all this, dramatic improvement. But here's, you can see over on the left, that's the normal striation of the device, the metal device. And then you can see all the corrosion that occurred on the rest of it.
Yeah.
Yep. And where'd all that go? Yep.
Right.
Into the body. Yep. So here's a school principal, same type of thing. So I'm going to have you just listen to her.
All right. So you had some reconstructive right foot surgery with titanium plates and screws. And just recently, this last week, we got the plates and screws out. And prior to that, what did your body feel like?
Since June, I have been experiencing all over body pain, fatigue, joint stiffness, and then nerve pain in the foot and going up the leg to the back.
And what about your focus or?
I've been in kind of a brain fog since the surgery. I thought it was the anesthetic for quite a while, but 4 months later, it really hadn't worn off much. I wake up in the morning and I feel like I haven't rested at all. I get home at night and I just can do nothing because just going to work has been enough, and it's just been mentally taxing.
And since getting the hardware out, what have you been feeling?
The first thing I noticed when I went home was a lot of energy and feeling like I just was thinking clearly. Other than the local pain from the surgery, the overall body pain was gone. My back pain was gone. The nerve pain is gone. The aches, the joint pain, all gone.
All right. Thanks.
So there's that, huh?
I hope we're going to talk about what happens when people can't get the metals removed. Like my wife has 2 knee replacements, they're metal replacements, and she can't get those removed. So we
right.
Talk about that maybe after the show, after your presentation.
Yeah. And remind me about that, because that is a big thing. That's where we really need to focus on some of those. And sometimes symptoms are so severe that they actually have, you got to get them tested, number one, right? Metal tested to see if you're allergic to those materials. And then I've worked with many patients from around the world where then had to find a more appropriate, metal device, and they've had to have the implant removed, the total knee or hip or whatever removed, and then something different placed in it, in place of it that they're not allergic to. Yeah. So here's a gentleman. He came to me He was just this in his he was 37, but he was basically disabled. He couldn't get off the couch for more than like 5 minutes at a time. And his cousin had heard my FDA talk. His cousin was from Florida, but this gentleman lived in Seattle, and he called, "Hey, can I come out and see you?" Sure. And I'm about 3 hours away from there, so he came, and he already got himself tested. He was allergic to nickel. And this is nitinol. This is a nitinol anchor, and nitinol has 50 to 55% nickel in it, so it's a high nickel device. And so we ended, and these can be a bear to get out because they're kind of made to stay in. But we were able to get it out, and then a few weeks after, I'm going to have you listen to what he had to say. And these are the symptoms that ended up resolving, after, or getting better or resolving after we got this out.
And tested, found out you were allergic to nickel. And this anchor has some nitinol in it, which is high in nickel. What type of symptoms have improved since having this anchor removed?
Weakness all over my body, fatigue, electrical kind of feeling sensation throughout my body, pain in my muscles and joints throughout, especially my upper body, and a lot of localized pain in my foot area where the anchor was at. Also, anxiety and brain fog are totally resolved.
Nice. Okay. And you had some muscle twitching, and that's improving, you feel?
Yeah, it's lessening every day.
All right. Thanks.
Yeah, so you kind of mentioned some of the muscle twitching in some of the patients that you work with, right?
Well, again, gadolinium symptoms mirror a lot of these, and I'm thinking that gadolinium is basically an ion that's free flowing and storing in fat and bone and brain and organs and tissues and things like that. And that is one metal we know we can get out. We've had tremendous success with that with our program. So that might be one of the solutions. If somebody can't get metals out, maybe we can at least reduce one of the metallic, bimetals in the system.
Well, my hope is with that, and even your program is, that's why I'm excited about it, is that these implants are constantly going to be releasing the metal ions, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so if your system and protocol can just keep getting these ions out, so then the ions aren't interacting and causing these systemic symptoms, as much, maybe you still get some, but if you get improved quality of life, that's what it's all about. Right?
Yeah, because it's like what my father has identified as the tipping point, where the straw that broke the camel's back. There's a certain level that if we can keep the level of those toxicities down, then we can at least alleviate a lot of the symptoms. So definitely, I see that people with like gadolinium and other metals in the system that are probably ionizing should be going through a program like this more readily.
Yeah, and that's where we look at, oxidative stress. And then when I worked with Dr. Boyd Haley, and, he talks about oxidative stress. And I believe that these, when we start reacting to these, whether it's toxic effects of the metals, whether it's, galvanic type reactions or, allergic type reactions, I think it's probably a combination of all of the above. But
I agree.
But it increases oxidative stress. And and then, like you say, you keep going, getting worse till you reach that tipping point for your particular body, right? Because everybody's different.
Absolutely.
And then your friend that you contacted me with, who's worked with that a lot,
Dr. Harold Zeliger.
Oh yeah, yep. So it was great talking to him. So thank you very much for that introduction. And I'm still learning all that too,
Right.
Yeah.
But Dr. Zeliger is a great resource. If you ever get around to publishing the paper, we certainly would love to have Dr. Zeliger peer review that.
Yeah, no, that would be great. That would be great. Yeah. So we're working on a paper, like you say, about we're talking about a bunch of this,
Mm-hmm.
and the electrical type things. And that particular paper, I had stainless steel screws in the foot. Well, I didn't. I took them out though. And then she had the dental metals, and she had severe shoulder pain, where it was recommended she have total shoulder replacements. Well, we got the metals out of the foot, metals out of the mouth, tested it similar to this, and once we got all the metals out, her shoulder pain essentially was gone.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually talked to her this morning, and she did 4 hours of power washing today, which she never could have ever done before. And she was a little sore, but I'd be a little sore too, but not much. So, but she's very ecstatic about it. So anyway, okay, so this is stainless steel. We're again testing to titanium. This is a titanium dental implant, 111 millivolts, and this is then to zirconia or ceramic, implant, right? And 0.1. So again, titanium to titanium, and this is to point out that titanium is not titanium. They are alloys, and they're made differently. These companies have proprietary, patents or whatever they are on them, and so they're not made the same. So they are dissimilar metals, even though they're both titanium. And then here's titanium to zirconia. I mean, you can see for yourself. You don't even have to have me saying anything here. And then here's titanium implant to titanium implant. So that's where you get into trouble sometimes, where, oh, you got another titanium implant, you should be fine. Well, no, they aren't. They have issues. And this could be why, if a different type of implant, different company type of implant was placed. So then here we go, titanium to zirconia. And then, so this is I've been working with a gal who presented with me to the FDA. Madras is her name. And so she was an expert for the FDA on adverse device event reporting. So she has Device Events is her company at this point in time that puts all these data banks together. And right now there's approximately 25 million adverse device events reported for all medical devices, including total hips, knees, CPAPs, everything, 25 million.
Wow.
Yeah, and this is Madras Kennard, and then now through April, just April, she put this together. There have been 5.1 million adverse events reported for titanium dental implants alone. So just titanium dental implants. You hear the ads all the time, right?
Sure.
But there's 1/5 of all reported adverse events in medicine for the FDA right now. 1/5 of them is just titanium dental implants.
Incredible.
Yeah, and I don't know what we're starting to study these, corrosion wise too.
Mm-hmm.
But 4.4 million of them were serious injury reports, and basically that was from lack of osseous integration. They weren't integrating. I mean, obviously the dental cavity is full of bacteria and all this stuff, and it's just, it takes a lot of skill to put these things in too. And but there's an issue there, obviously. Right?
Obviously.
And I deal with a lot of people from around the world with this issue too, because they contact me, just okay, what do you think? And then I direct them back to their dentists or oral surgeons or what have you, But then we try to get information for them, and to be able to talk, because a lot of the docs, surgeons, dentists don't know about this, don't know about these different reactions with these metals at this point in time.
At this point, yep.
At this point, yeah. So we're trying to educate is what we're trying to do. Obviously. Yeah. So, and then just in mind, actually, before I went to Istanbul, I put these numbers together and started looking when I started recording. It was in October of 2015 of my patients, and kind of some of like the reports that I just, these voice recordings, and also I had written a bunch of things down. And I went back to when I started that, and I was removing metal from majority of my patients at that point in time. Just, it was just their option to, if they wanted to. They didn't have to. But out of all of and vast majority did. I mean, whether they had symptoms or not, they would get them out. And so there was 314 patients in that period of time. And 83 of the patients, and I didn't even question everybody, but 83 had life-changing improvements after I removed the hardware. And, that may not be just allergy, but it may be these other things we're talking about too, with the electrical or potentially galvanic or toxic or whatever. But anyway, that's 26.4%. That's 1 out of every 4. And people they're saying allergies to metals are rare. Well, what I talk about is allergies and reactions, and allergies and reactions is 26.4%. And guess what? That's not rare.
No, that's not rare.
So I think that's what we really, I don't think we're asking the right questions, when we're looking at problems with metals. We're not, it's just not the pain around the knee. It's if you have migraines, if you have neck pain, foot pain, other leg pains, cramps in your body, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, that can all be related to any metal you have in your body, no matter how small, Yeah. So those are the questions we need to start asking as a medical community, So, and I think the last memo I have is actually a cardiac surgeon that I was talking to recently. And he was around an area, there was these it's called the patent foraminal valley in children. It's what we're all born with, kind of a little hole in our heart, then it fills in a younger age. Well, one of the surgeons had replaced these 5,000 nitinol, closure devices in their particular community. And they were finding these kids, later on in life in their 20s and 30s with fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, rashes around their body and what have you. And so then he and a bunch of his colleagues had to remove these things when they started having these various symptoms and what have you. So I'm going to have to listen.
I understand that you've seen some systemic symptoms associated with metals, and you are a surgeon. What type of surgeon are you?
I'm a practicing cardiothoracic surgeon.
And what type of symptoms did you see?
I was seeing patients that had PFO closure devices implanted several years prior to visiting with me. Their symptoms included chronic fatigue, migratory rashes, joint swelling, and fatigue.
And then what happened after you were able, and what were these the PFO closures made out of?
These devices were mostly a skeleton made out of nitinol, which is a nickel titanium alloy.
And then once you remove them, what happened to the patient's symptoms?
In about 50% of the cases, so first, before we removed them, we tested to confirm that there was a nickel allergy, and about 50% of the time, the symptoms improved significantly once these devices had been removed.
Okay, thank you.
So there you go. It's not just me saying this, right?
I was just drinking my water, and it dawned on me that there's an interesting story about titanium that comes from the development of the SR-71 Blackbird, which I happen to love. I think you and I share that love for the SR-71 Blackbird, but the titanium early on in the development of the SR-71 Blackbird was corroding faster than they thought it should. I mean, it was like before they can even finish the plane, some of the titanium had corroded. And they discovered it was because they were using chlorinated water to clean the tools and things like that. And it was contaminating the titanium. And apparently the chloride ions are actually what was causing the breakdown. It's the one thing that titanium is affected by, like, Superman and what is that? What is he?
Kryptonite.
Kryptonite. Thank you. But yeah. So the chlorinated water was affecting the titanium. And don't they use the aerospace grade titanium for these teeth implants?
That's my understanding. For titanium and that type of thing is my understanding, that because they use so much, the medical community just kind of glommed onto them.
Yeah.
And for their grade. But also then you look at the body. What's in the body? What's salt? Sodium chloride. Okay, so that's salt water in our body, and that's actually in our paper where we talk about the corrosion of these metals.
Right.
Especially with chloride is corrosive to these.
And we're
metals.
drinking chlorinated water, for crying out loud.
So well, I mean, depending on your water system and all that, So yeah, but just the makeup of our body leads to corrosion. It's salt water.
Well, I'm thinking that the titanium teeth implants, they're the first on the line there to receive the chlorinated water if it's not being filtered. And gosh, that cannot be helping at all.
Well, they had problems with fluoride. A lot of reactions
Worse.
papers I've read, fluoride and dental, these titanium dental implants too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's out there. So that's what, when, like, what I recommend, number one, having a high index of suspicion when there's metal in the body, whether it's dental, orthopedic, or what have you, and you start having symptoms. This is what I think all practicing physicians should be looking at. I mean, when you have somebody come in with, chronic fatigue or fibromyalgia or migraines, you should be asking what metals are in the body.
Right.
Period, in my mind. I mean, that's number one, because it's relatively easy to, do this testing that we're talking about, this lymphocyte transformation testing, and at least to see if they're having reactions, at least on an allergy side, to these metals that can contribute to exactly what I just showed you.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's very simple. You get, a screw or plate or what I'm seeing a lot of now, these young women. I've seen young men also, but young women who had braces and they have this lingual bar, and they have brain fog, they have fatigue, all these things, and are rashes, and they get the bar out, and hey, guess what? Things go away. And, not in all cases, but because you have to diagnose everything, but
Sure.
in cases that are related to this, yeah. So this, the testing, the ELISA testing, have been very impressed with that, and the number of metals that they can test for, and all kinds of different orthopedic plus dental metals. And then there's the orthopedic analysis in Chicago. Patch testing, I haven't done as much. It has, quote, been a gold standard, so to speak, but it's more of a hapten response. It's not taking the lymphocytes. And sometimes you can actually sensitize people to the metals when you start doing patch testing, because now their body sees it and then they can react to it more later also.
Right.
But
Right.
titanium, Mayo Clinic did a study where in 10 years they didn't get one positive, titanium patch test in 10 years, but they had metal, titanium implants that they removed, and the patient got replaced with something different and got dramatically better. So, but I have seen positive patch tests to titanium, but it's been more rare as far as that goes. But still, my preference, what I use is the ELISA, or the orthopedic analysis, depending on what's most available, and then, like I say, the ELISA is, it's in Canada. They're trying to get a lab going in Florida, which is going to be excellent once that gets going. So excited about that, because I think the demand for these tests are just going to go, probably out the roof when people start, appreciating this and can then see the benefits of what's happening with these patients when they're, instead of putting them on 18 different medications, we can get them down to one.
Yeah. Amen to that.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be promoting the heck out of those, because I really believe that although our protocol is capable of dealing with heavy metals, chemicals, mycotoxins, and even radioactive elements, the thing is that it's not going to be the end all be all, especially if metals are involved. So I think at least it's a great starting point for people who can't get things removed. But I definitely learned so much from you. And I've been thrilled to be collaborating with you, and I really appreciate that presentation you've just given us. I'm sure the audience will too. So is there a way people can contact you if they have questions, or would you rather they go through me?
It'd probably go through you at this point in time, and because I'm just
You're retired.
on the run. And what's that?
I said you're retired.
Yeah, not quite. No.
I
The
guess
big
retirement
thing
could happen.
is right now, yeah, finishing up these studies and then getting going. And papers written. I have so many papers to actually. A number of these cases could be just papers in and of themselves. The stiff
Sure.
person syndrome. There's quote been, at least I haven't seen, or at least I heard at one point, there hasn't been any paper out there that there's been a quote cure to that.
Cure is a nasty word to the medical profession. You know that.
It is, and I wouldn't say cure. I would say resolution of symptoms, of paralysis. Symptoms is what occurred in that case. He hasn't had them in 10 years. I don't know what to call that. for the medical profession, but in his life, it's pretty darn great right now.
That's what we're looking for. Yep. In fact,
Yeah.
you already probably know this, but there's no tests that we can provide that show body burden pre and post detox. I mean, they're just all the testing can do in the case of like urine tests and stool tests is show what the body's eliminating or dealing with. Whereas blood tests are pretty much only going to show what got liberated from fat or what have you in the bloodstream at that particular time. It's not a body burden type of value. In fact, the only way we were able to do the 15 studies that are published is with the fat biopsies. And we would literally have to take those fat samples to a university lab in order to have any kind of diagnostic testing done, because there's no commercial lab available that can do these. So I get asked all the time, what kind of testing do you recommend for pre and post detox? Well, all we can do is subjective testing. How do you feel?
Yeah, right. Now, what Dr. Stetskal did, she was the inventor of the ELISA test. She was an immunotoxicologist from Sweden. And but what she would do, and she has a lot of papers out there, but she would go and then test them do the ELISA test, and then after the metals are removed, whether they're dental, orthopedic, or what have you, then go and then do them again 6 months or longer later and see. And that she saw a decreased sensitivity index associated with that once the body then kind of started getting over that insult.
I like that concept because it's the sensitivity that is being tested, not the burden level. So that's another good reason for us to start promoting the heck out of these ELISA tests once they get more convenient. Because right now, as I understand it, people on the East Coast can send samples off to Germany and those samples would still be valid. But if we tried to send them from the West Coast, they would probably be, I guess, ruined or no longer.
It's time. Yeah, they should be there within 24 to 48 hours. 36 or under, but it's hard to get it there, especially since COVID with whatever with the airlines, harder to do it. And then it's been difficult, and they're going through some processes right now where it's even they're kind of inundated over in Germany anyway, so they're not accepting U.S. samples right now.
Right.
So that's why I'm really pushing to get this Canadian lab going, and at least to begin with. And then once the Florida lab's up and going, that's going to be great.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I'll be monitoring that for my audience to make sure that they are aware when these testing sites are available. Canada, their processes to approve anything are so slow. I just hope that doesn't affect the one that they're trying to open there. I have a lot of trouble getting like our supply kit to Canada because they're supplements in some cases because we have to replenish the good stuff that goes out with the bad stuff. But the thing is that our supply kit is not available right now, even though there is a actual reseller of the kit who is in Canada. They still have been I think they're in the third year of getting the Canadian government to give them approval.
Well, yeah, well, and then ultimate goal with the gal who's working on getting this Florida lab going is to get one out on the West Coast also. So that would be nice if we can, have them on both sides there. So
yeah, I agree. Yeah. So, well, do we have anything else to add?
There's always lots, but we covered a lot,
Yeah, I think I covered a lot of the things I wanted to discuss. And again, that presentation was stunning. And I'm really appreciative of the fact that you presented that for my audience. And I think from there, that'll go far and wide. And hopefully, we'll get the word out and people will start to understand better and hopefully follow you on your, the videos, the interviews and things like that to learn more. So again, I appreciate your time today, Scott. And we'll be talking a lot more over the course of the next few years, I know, but just for today, I just want to tell you that, again, I'm very appreciative. Anything else you'd like to add?
You're welcome. Nope. Well, I appreciate what you're doing too, and I think we all have to work together.
Absolutely.
And
into that.
we all have something to add. We all have something to add, and you know, if we all think we know it all, well, forget it. That's not going to work.
Right. It's a
So,
constant
you
learning
know,
curve for me.
yeah, well, for all of us, you know. I
Sure.
mean,
Sure.
the human body is quite amazing, and we don't fully understand it, and I don't know if we ever will, but at least we try to do as much as we can, and then really try. My goal is to help people out there that are suffering, you
Me
know.
too. Thank you for
And
that.
so that's the thing, you know, is that at this point in time for me. So, you know,
All right.
I've had my own family have issues, and so myself included. You know, that's a whole nother story. But yeah, so when you can experience things yourself, see it with your own family, I mean, it brings it right home. And and that's probably one of the reasons I'm so passionate about everything too. But I'm really passionate, especially for being able to help people. And I don't even realize that they just go, well, I mean, many people just say, hey, you've saved my life. And I go, well, you know, thank you. I mean, I don't see it that way, but they do, you know.
Yeah.
So anyway, so that's nice, you know.
Yeah, and I feel the passion too because our detoxination protocol saved my life back in
Mhm.
1986, and I would say that if it hadn't done what it did for me back then, you and I would not be talking today.
Go down a different path, right?
Right. I was in IT for, in fact, since '79. I've been in the computer world, but it was the fact that I was there at my dad's office when he was, you know, developing what is now detoxination, because it was 36 years in occupational medicine before we brought it to the public. And it's always been 100% holistic. And that's what I've loved about it. But the California Medical Board even challenged him for using this method in occupational medicine, but he submitted a 50-page response letter, which is in the back of our books on a detoxification using niacin. And so I published the 50-page response letter, which they reviewed and gave him permission to continue to do this program. And so for 36 years, occupational medicine, we've been treating patients. But the interesting thing was always the fact that chronic conditions were being reversed with this. The New York Rescue Workers Detoxification Project is a huge example of that. But anyway, because it saved my life, and I was fortunate enough to hit a place where it was obvious that my life had turned around, you know, I realized that this needed to come to the public. So here we are. And again, thank you for the presentation, and we look forward to getting that out to the public.
Sounds great. Okay. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you.